I was rocking my daughter when my sister refused to touch her. My husband went pale. "Please don't ask questions tonight," he whispered. Then he fell to his knees and said, "There was no clinic. Your sister and I made the baby ourselves." I stood there with my 4-month-old daughter against my chest, feeling her soft little breaths through her pajamas. My husband was on his knees. My sister had just walked out of my house like she was running from something she could no longer carry. And the baby I had prayed for, cried for, and nearly broken myself trying to have was suddenly at the center of a truth I had never agreed to live inside. This did not start as betrayal. It started with grief. 3 years earlier, I woke up in a hospital bed and learned that the future I had imagined for myself was gone. The doctors were careful with their words. They said it had been an emergency. They said the surgery saved my life. They said there had been no other safe option. But all I heard was that I would never carry a child. Not later. Not after healing. Not after another treatment. Never. My husband, Jason, sat beside me with his hand wrapped around mine like he was afraid I might disappear if he let go. He had always been the steady one. The one who could make a bad day feel manageable by touching the back of my neck and saying, "We'll figure it out." But that day, he had no joke. He just kept whispering, "I'm here." I wanted that to comfort me. Instead, it made me want to turn away. Because I did not want him to be there for this version of me. I did not want him loving a woman who felt hollowed out. I did not want him looking at me with pity, even though I knew he was only heartbroken for me. Grief made me cruel to myself. It made every stroller feel like an accusation. It made baby showers unbearable. It made diaper commercials feel personal. I would smile in public, tell people I was recovering, then fall apart in the car before I even started the engine. Jason tried harder than anyone could have asked. He packed away the baby books we had started collecting because I could not look at them. He stopped mentioning the nursery unless I brought it up first. At night, when I could not sleep, he would lie beside me and trace slow circles on my back until my breathing settled. Once, I whispered, "You didn't sign up for this." He said, "I signed up for you." I believed him. I needed to. My younger sister, Heather, kept showing up too. She brought groceries. She cleaned without asking. She sat beside me on the couch when I did not feel like talking and pretended to watch shows neither of us cared about. Sometimes she made me laugh. Sometimes she just watched me quietly, like she was afraid to blink in case I disappeared while her eyes were closed. I did not realize how much my pain was hurting her too. About a year after the surgery, Heather came over for dinner. It was supposed to be a normal night. I made pasta. Jason opened a bottle of wine. Heather barely touched hers. I noticed her hands first. She kept twisting her napkin until the corner started to tear. I asked, "Are you okay?" She looked at me, then at Jason, then down at the table. "I've been thinking about something," she said. Jason leaned back in his chair. "That sounds serious." Heather did not smile. That was when I felt my stomach drop. She looked at me again, and her eyes filled with tears. "I want to carry a baby for you." The kitchen went still. I heard the refrigerator humming. I heard Jason's glass touch the table. I heard my own breath catch. Heather rushed through the rest before she lost courage. "I know it's complicated. I know it's not perfect. But I've been reading about it. Since you don't have frozen eggs, I could use mine. Jason's sperm, my egg, but your baby. Your child. I could be the surrogate." I pushed my chair back. Not because I was angry. Because my body could not stay seated under the weight of what she had just offered. Heather stood too. "Amanda, please say something." I tried. Nothing came out. Then I started crying. Not quietly. Not gracefully. I broke. Heather came around the table and wrapped her arms around me, and I folded into her. Jason stood there with both hands over his mouth, staring at us like he could not believe what was happening. I kept asking, "You would do that for me?" Heather cried into my hair and said, "Of course I would." At the time, I thought it was the most selfless thing anyone had ever done for me. That is what makes all of this so painful now. If Heather had been cruel from the beginning, maybe this would be easier. If she had always been jealous or bitter or careless, I could turn her into a villain and move on. But she was not. She loved me. She loved me enough to offer her body as a bridge over the deepest grief of my life. And I loved her so much for it that I ignored every warning sign that came later. At first, we did everything properly. Doctors. Appointments. Legal paperwork. Awkward conversations that made all three of us stare at the floor. No one prepares you for how strange it is to talk about making a baby through forms, signatures, medical terms, and bills. Every step was emotional, expensive, and uncomfortable. But we were hopeful. The first procedure failed. I remember the call from the clinic. The nurse was kind in that careful way that tells you bad news before the words do. I stood in the hallway with the phone pressed to my ear, nodding like she could see me. When I hung up, Jason was watching me from the living room. I shook my head once. He crossed the room and pulled me into his arms. The second attempt failed too. That one hurt worse because I had convinced myself the first failure had been the price we had to pay before the miracle. Heather tried to act brave. "It's okay," she said. "This happens." We knew it might take time, but I saw her crying in her car before she left. We moved forward because stopping felt impossible. Jason took extra work when he could. We used savings. Then we borrowed money. Then we used money we should not have touched. Everything became a number. Appointments had numbers. Medications had numbers. Hope itself came with a bill attached. When the next major attempt failed, something in me went quiet. Not sad. Not dramatic. Just empty. I stopped eating properly. I stopped answering messages. I stayed in bed long after morning came because standing up felt like a decision I did not have the strength to make. Jason begged me to talk to someone. Heather came over and cried in the hallway because I would not let her into the bedroom. My mother, Carolyn, called constantly. My father, Scott, tried to sound calm, but his voice always cracked before he hung up. Everyone was scared. I was scared too. I just did not know how to say that without making it real. One morning, Jason sat beside me on the bed and said, "Amanda, I love you. But I can't be the only thing holding you together." That sentence frightened me because part of me knew he was right. 2 days later, I checked into a mental health facility. I hated admitting I needed that. I hated sleeping in a room that was not mine. I hated locked doors, scheduled meals, group sessions, and being asked how safe I felt on a scale from 1 to 10. But I needed help surviving my darkest thoughts. So I stayed. On the 4th day, Jason and Heather came to visit. I was sitting in a small lounge with a paper cup of tea I had not touched. When they walked in together, I immediately knew something had happened. Heather had been crying. Jason looked exhausted. But they were smiling. Jason sat beside me and took my hands. Heather pulled her chair close and said, "Please don't get overwhelmed." I almost laughed because overwhelmed had become my permanent state. "What happened?" I asked. Heather took a shaky breath. She said she had called the clinic. She said she begged them. She said she explained everything we had been through, the failed attempts, the money, my hospitalization, all of it. Then Jason squeezed my hands and said they agreed to one more try. A basic procedure. Reduced cost. Payment plan. I stared at him. "What?" Heather nodded quickly. "They still have what they need from Jason. They said if we move quickly, we can try again." Hope hit me so hard it almost hurt. For days, I had been trying to accept that there were no doors left. No money. No options. No baby. And suddenly, they were telling me there was one more chance. I cried so hard a staff member looked through the window to check on us. Jason kissed my hands over and over. Heather leaned forward and said, "We're not giving up on you." I thought that was love. I thought they had found one last miracle in a system that had taken everything from us. A few weeks after I came home, Heather walked into our bathroom with a pregnancy test. She closed the door. Jason and I stood outside, frozen in the hallway. When she opened the door, she was shaking. She held up the test. 2 lines. Jason made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I grabbed Heather so hard she stumbled backward. "We did it," she whispered. I believed her. That was the beginning of the happiest lie of my life. Heather's pregnancy became the center of my world. I told myself I would give her space. I told myself I would not hover. I told myself she was still my sister, not just the person carrying my child. But every part of me was terrified. Terrified something would go wrong. Terrified she would change her mind. Terrified that if I stopped watching the miracle for even 1 second, it would disappear. Heather was patient at first. When I brought over too many groceries, she smiled and said, "You know I can still walk through a store, right?" When I texted her 3 times in one morning asking if she had taken her vitamins, she replied, "Yes, Mom." That word made me cry. Mom. I had trained myself not to want it too loudly anymore. Now it was coming back to me through my sister's body, and I did not know how to hold that without shaking. Jason came to appointments when he could. Sometimes he was quiet in the car afterward, but I thought he was overwhelmed. I thought he was afraid to trust it. The first ultrasound destroyed me in the best way. That tiny flicker on the screen. That impossible little heartbeat. I gripped Jason's hand so tightly he winced. Heather stared at the monitor without blinking. The technician smiled and said everything looked good. Everything looked good. Those words became my favorite sentence. Afterward, in the parking lot, I hugged Heather and whispered, "You're giving me my life back." Her body stiffened for just a second. I felt it. Then she hugged me back. I told myself she was just emotional. That became a habit. Every strange look, every quiet moment, every time Jason stared too long at the floor or Heather left too quickly, I wrapped it in an excuse and put it away. Because the alternative was unthinkable. The months passed. Heather's belly grew. I decorated the nursery in soft green and cream because I wanted it to feel peaceful. Jason built the crib twice because the first time he said it did not feel sturdy enough. I folded tiny clothes into drawers and cried over socks that looked too small to be real. We chose the name Lauren. It felt simple. Warm. Easy to say. Heather repeated it softly the first time she heard it. Lauren. Then she looked away. I thought she was imagining saying goodbye. Now I know there was more. When Lauren was born, the room felt almost holy. Heather looked exhausted, pale, and far away. Jason stood beside me, gripping my shoulder. I was shaking so badly the nurse told me to sit before they handed me the baby. Then Lauren cried. That sound cracked my heart open. When they placed her in my arms, I did not feel healed. I felt chosen. Her face was red and scrunched. Her little hand curled against my chest. She had dark hair and the tiniest mouth I had ever seen. I whispered, "Hi, baby. I'm your mom." Heather turned her face toward the window. Jason cried silently beside me. At the time, I thought we were all overwhelmed by love. I did not know two of us were also carrying guilt. The first weeks at home were a blur. Bottles. Laundry. Rocking. Whispering. Learning the difference between hungry cries, tired cries, and the mysterious third kind that meant nothing except being alive was apparently upsetting. I loved every second and hated some seconds, and then felt guilty for hating them. Jason was helpful, but nervous. I expected nerves. New parents are nervous. But his felt different. He watched Lauren like he was afraid she would accuse him of something. Sometimes I would hand her to him, and he would hold her too carefully. "You can relax," I said once. "She's not glass." He looked down at her and said, "I know." But his face said he did not know anything. Heather became worse after the birth. Before Lauren was born, I could explain her distance as pregnancy exhaustion. Afterward, I could not explain it at all. She visited less. When she did visit, she avoided the nursery. If Lauren was asleep, Heather would stand in the doorway and stare at the crib with this hollow expression. If Lauren cried, Heather flinched. One afternoon, Lauren was fussing while I warmed a bottle. Heather sat on the couch, twisting her fingers together. I said, "Can you hold her for 1 second?" Heather stood so fast she knocked her knee against the coffee table. "No." I blinked. "Okay. Sorry, I just need." I said, "No, Amanda." Her voice was sharp. Lauren cried harder. Jason walked in from the hallway and froze. Heather grabbed her purse. "I have to go." She left before I could ask what I had done wrong. That night, I told Jason I was worried about her. He was washing bottles at the sink. His back went still. "She probably needs space," he said. "I know, but this feels bigger than that." He scrubbed the same bottle for too long. "Jason." He turned the water off. "What do you want me to say?" I stared at him. "I want you to talk to me." He looked tired. Not normal tired. Haunted tired. "I don't know how to fix this," he said. I thought he meant Heather's sadness. I thought he meant the strange emotional weight of surrogacy. So I softened. "You don't have to fix it," I said. "I just need you here with me." He nodded, but he would not meet my eyes. After that, I noticed more. Jason pacing downstairs after midnight. Jason staring at his phone, then turning it face down when I entered the room. Jason apologizing for things I had not accused him of. Once, I woke up and found him in the nursery. He was standing over Lauren's crib with one hand covering his mouth. I whispered, "Is she okay?" He jumped. "She's fine." "Then why are you crying?" He wiped his face. "I'm just tired." I wanted to believe him. So I did. That is one of the most painful parts now. I helped them lie to me because I wanted so badly for the lie to be true. The dinner happened when Lauren was 4 months old. My mother had been telling me for weeks that I needed to invite Heather over and repair things. "She carried your child," Mom said. "That bond is complicated. Be gentle with her." I had been gentle for months. Still, I invited Heather because I missed my sister. I missed the woman who sat with me after my surgery. I missed the woman who offered me motherhood with tears in her eyes. I made a simple dinner. Nothing fancy. Just food people make when they are trying to create normal out of tension. Heather arrived late. She brought a small stuffed lamb for Lauren, but she did not hand it to her. She placed it on the table near the door and stepped away from it like it hurt to look at. Jason saw it. His face changed. I asked, "Are you okay?" He said, "Yeah," but he had gone pale. Dinner was awful from the first minute. Heather barely touched her plate. Jason barely spoke. I filled every silence with desperate little comments. Lauren sat in her baby seat near my chair, making soft noises. At one point, she smiled in her sleep. I looked at Heather, expecting some kind of tenderness. Heather's eyes filled with tears. Then she pushed back from the table. "I can't do this." I stood. "Do what?" She looked at Jason. "Not me." Jason closed his eyes. That tiny movement made the room tilt. Heather grabbed her bag. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" I asked. She did not answer. She walked out. The door shut behind her. Lauren started crying. Jason stood slowly, like his body hurt. He walked to the cabinet, took out a bottle, and went outside. I picked up Lauren and held her against my shoulder. For almost 2 hours, I stayed inside. I fed her, changed her, rocked her, told myself I was overreacting, told myself Heather was struggling, told myself Jason was stressed. But beneath all those excuses, something darker moved. Something new. When Lauren finally fell asleep, I put her in her crib and walked outside. Jason was on the back deck. The bottle was half empty. He sat with his elbows on his knees, staring at the ground. "Jason," I said. He looked up. His face collapsed. I had never seen him look that broken. He slid out of the chair and dropped to his knees. "I can't keep lying," he sobbed. My chest went cold. "What lie?" He pressed both hands to his face. "I'm sorry." I stepped closer. "What lie?" He looked at me, and I knew whatever came next would divide my life in two. "There was no clinic," he said. I stared at him. "No. The last try. The one we told you about when you were in treatment. It didn't happen." My hands went numb. "What are you talking about?" He started crying harder. "We didn't have the money. There was no payment plan. Heather never called them. The clinic didn't do anything." I could hear my own heartbeat. "Then how did she get pregnant?" Jason looked like he wanted to disappear. "Please," he whispered. "Please let me explain." I backed away. "How did she get pregnant?" He said my name like a warning. I raised my voice. "How?" He broke. "Heather was ovulating. We were scared. We thought if you came home and there was no hope left, you wouldn't survive that darkness again." The night air went silent. Jason reached for me, but I stepped away before he could touch me. He said, "It was one time. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't an affair. It was awful. We cried. We hated it. We only wanted to give you Lauren." I heard the words. I understood them. But they did not feel real. My husband and my sister had secretly conceived my child while I was in a mental health facility trying to survive the lowest point of my life. They had come to me with swollen eyes and told me a miracle had happened. They had watched me cry with gratitude. They had watched me care for Heather through the pregnancy. They had let me build a nursery around a lie. I whispered, "You let me thank her." Jason stopped crying for 1 second. That was the sentence that hit him. "You let me thank her," I said again. "You let me call her selfless. You let me hold her hand at appointments. You let me believe my daughter came from hope, not from the two people I trusted most deciding my consent did not matter." He was sobbing again. "I thought we were saving you." I looked at him, and something in me went completely still. "You didn't save me," I said. "You replaced me in my own life." Then I walked inside. I do not remember packing clearly. I remember the diaper bag on the floor. Formula. Wipes. Tiny pajamas. Lauren's blanket. My hands shook so badly I could barely zip anything. Jason followed me from room to room, crying, begging, trying to explain the same thing in different words. We panicked. "We thought you needed hope. We never meant to hurt you. It was never about desire. She's your daughter." That last one made me turn around. Lauren was asleep in her car seat beside the door, her little mouth open, completely innocent. I looked at my husband and said, "Do not use her to make this smaller." He stepped back. "I'm not. You are." He covered his mouth. I grabbed my purse. He whispered, "Please don't take her." Everything in me sharpened. "Don't tell me what I can take." His face twisted. I had never hated him before. Even then, I do not know if hate is the right word. It was worse than hate. Hate has heat. Hate has energy. This was cold. This was looking at a person I loved and realizing he had been standing beside me for a year with the truth hidden behind his back. He did not block the door. Maybe he knew better. Maybe he was too ashamed. Maybe some part of him understood he had already taken enough choices from me. I carried Lauren to the car and drove. I had no plan. I did not call anyone at first, because I did not know what to say. How do you tell your father your husband and your sister secretly crossed the one boundary that should have protected your marriage? How do you explain that the baby in the back seat is both your miracle and the proof of your betrayal? I drove until I found a small motel near the highway. The room smelled like old carpet and cleaning spray. The blanket was thin. The lamp flickered if I moved the cord wrong. I set Lauren's carrier on the bed and sat beside her. She woke up and started fussing. I picked her up automatically. That part did not change. My body knew how to be her mother even while my mind was breaking. I fed her, burped her, changed her, rocked her. Then I sat on the edge of the motel bed until sunrise, staring at the wall while she slept against my chest. By morning, my phone had exploded. Jason had called over and over. Heather had called too. My mother kept sending messages. My father called once. That one scared me most, so I called him back first. He answered before the first ring finished. Amanda? The sound of my father's voice broke me. I tried to speak, but all that came out was air. He said, "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Is the baby with you?" "Yes." "Good. That's all I need right now. Breathe." I cried then. Not softly. I cried so hard Lauren startled in my arms and started crying too, and then I cried harder because I had scared her. My dad stayed quiet until I could speak. Then I told him. Not all of it. Not in order. Just pieces. No clinic. Jason. Heather. While I was in treatment. Lauren. The silence after I finished was terrifying. Then my father said, very carefully, "Tell me where you are." "I don't know if I can." "That's okay," he said immediately. "You don't have to. But listen to me. What they did was not love." I closed my eyes. He continued, "People can do terrible things while telling themselves they had good reasons. That doesn't make it less terrible." That sentence gave me something solid to stand on. Later that day, I found a quiet rental near a lake and booked it for a week. I needed walls that did not know Jason's voice. I needed silence that did not belong to my house. I needed space to think without everyone breathing their version of forgiveness down my neck. The rental was small. 1 bedroom. Old couch. Little kitchen. A porch facing the water. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt like hiding. That night, Heather texted me. I stared at her name for a long time before opening it. Her message was long. She said she loved me. She said she had never meant to betray me. She said she had watched me disappear after the failed treatments and truly believed I might not survive another loss. She said the decision had damaged her too. Then she wrote, "I gave up my body, my peace, and my dignity to give you a child. How can you look at Lauren's face and call what I did cheating?" I put the phone down. I walked to the sink and gripped the counter until my knuckles hurt. Because that was exactly the trap. Lauren's face. Everyone kept bringing up Lauren's face. As if loving my daughter meant I had to accept how she was conceived. As if a beautiful result could wash the lie clean. As if motherhood required me to be grateful for my own humiliation. I texted Heather back only once. "Lauren is innocent. You are not." Then I blocked her for the night. Not forever. Just long enough to breathe. My mother was worse. She called the next morning. I almost did not answer, but some part of me still wanted my mom. I wanted her to be horrified. I wanted her to say, "Come here. I've got you." I wanted the kind of outrage that would make me feel less insane. Instead, she was crying. "Amanda, please don't make any permanent decisions right now." I closed my eyes. "Mom, I'm not defending how they did it. But you are." "No. I'm saying it came from fear. We were all afraid. You were so dark back then. You don't remember what it was like for us." That snapped something in me. I was the one living it. "I know." "No, you don't. Because if you did, you would understand that being scared for me did not give them permission to make choices behind my back." She was quiet. Then she said, "Your daughter needs her father." I looked over at Lauren sleeping in the portable crib. My daughter needs a mother who is allowed to feel pain without being called ungrateful. My mother started crying harder. "Do you want to destroy this family?" I laughed once, bitterly. I didn't. She said I was angry. She said I was traumatized. She said I needed counseling before making decisions. Maybe she was right about counseling. But she was wrong about one thing. I was not confused because I was angry. I was angry because I had finally stopped being confused. For days, Jason sent messages. Some were apologies. Some were voice notes I did not play. Some were videos of him sitting on our kitchen floor, crying so hard I could barely recognize him. He kept saying the same thing. I know I hurt you. I hate myself. But I can't regret Lauren. That was the cruelest sentence. Because I could not regret Lauren either. I would never regret my daughter. But I regretted the lie around her. I regretted every moment I had spent praising people who were hiding the truth from me. I regretted every time I kissed Jason goodnight while he carried that secret into our bed. I regretted every time I hugged Heather and called her brave while she let me believe a story she had invented. Lauren became my anchor during that week. Not because babies fix anything. They do not. A baby does not pause betrayal. A baby does not soften panic. A baby does not make grief polite. But Lauren needed me in simple, honest ways. Food. Warmth. Clean clothes. A safe chest to sleep on. She did not need explanations. She did not need me to decide whether my marriage could survive. She just needed her mother. And every time I picked her up, I remembered that I was still capable of loving something purely, even when everything around that love was contaminated. On the fourth day, my father arrived. I had finally told him where I was. He knocked softly, like he was afraid too loud a sound might break me. When I opened the door, he looked past me at Lauren first, then at me. His face crumpled. He stepped inside and hugged me with one arm while holding a bag of groceries in the other. I didn't know what you needed, he said. So I brought everything. That was my father. Practical love. Diapers. Soup. Coffee. A phone charger. A tiny stuffed bear. I cried when I saw the bear. He looked alarmed. What? Is it wrong? No, I said. It's just normal. He stayed for 3 hours. He did not push me to talk. He washed bottles. Took out trash. Held Lauren while I showered for the first time in 2 days. When I came out, he was sitting in the rocking chair with Lauren asleep on his chest, looking down at her with tears in his eyes. She's beautiful, he said. I know. He looked at me. And she is not responsible for how adults failed you. That was the first time someone said both truths in the same room. Lauren was beautiful. And I had been failed. Not one truth erasing the other. Both. Before he left, he said, I spoke to an attorney. I stiffened. He raised one hand. You don't have to do anything. But you need to know your options. Custody, separation, your rights, Lauren's stability. Information is not a decision. That felt fair. Information is not a decision. So I agreed. Not to divorce. Not yet. But to know what the ground under my feet actually looked like. Jason found out somehow that my dad had visited. That night, he sent a message that simply said, please don't let your father turn you against me. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, you did that yourself. I agreed to meet Jason in public because I did not trust myself to go back to the house. Not because I thought he would hurt me. Because I was afraid the house would. Every room there held a version of me that did not know the truth. The kitchen where Heather offered to carry a baby. The hallway where she held up the pregnancy test. The nursery where I folded tiny clothes with innocent joy. The bedroom where Jason slept beside me while hiding the one thing that would have changed everything. So we met in a quiet cafe. My father stayed in the parking lot with Lauren. Jason was already inside when I arrived. He stood too quickly. For 1 second, I saw my husband. Not the liar. Not the man on his knees. My husband. The man who held me after surgery. The man who learned how to make tea the way I liked it. The man who cried when Lauren was born. That almost broke me more than the anger. Because betrayal does not erase love all at once. It poisons it. Jason looked thinner. His eyes were red. He had not shaved. Thank you for coming, he said. I sat down. He waited like he thought I might speak first. I did not. So he started. He said he was sorry. He said he knew sorry was not enough. He said he had replayed that day 1,000 times and hated himself every time. Then he said, but I need you to understand how scared we were. I held up one hand. No. He stopped. I understand fear, I said. I was the one in the facility. I was the one who had to admit I did not trust myself to be alone. Do not explain fear to me like it belongs to you. His mouth closed. I continued, you and Heather were scared. Fine. You were desperate. Fine. But you made my marriage, my future, my motherhood, and my recovery into a problem you could solve without me. His eyes filled again. We thought telling you would destroy you. You decided the truth belonged to you. He whispered, I know. No, I said. I don't think you do. Because you keep telling me it was one time. You keep telling me it was not romantic. You keep telling me you hated it. But the act is not the whole betrayal. He looked down. The betrayal is every day after, I said. Every day you watched me believe the clinic story. Every day you watched me trust you. Every day you let me love my sister like she had saved me cleanly. He cried silently. I did not comfort him. That felt cruel. It also felt necessary. For once, his pain could not become my job. He said, "What happens now?" "I don't know. Can I see Lauren?" My chest tightened. "Yes," I said carefully. "But not alone right now." He nodded quickly. "Anything. Whatever you need." That was the first right answer he had given. After the cafe, my father brought Lauren inside. Jason saw her and completely fell apart. He did not rush toward her. He waited. I appreciated that more than I wanted to. I lifted Lauren from her carrier and held her for a moment before passing her to him. His hand shook. "Hi, baby," he whispered. Lauren stared up at him with wide, serious eyes. Then she smiled. Jason covered his mouth and cried. I looked away. Not because I did not care. Because I cared too much, and caring made everything harder. That meeting did not fix anything. But it changed the shape of the next step. I agreed to a temporary arrangement. Jason could see Lauren with me or my father present. He would not come to the rental. I would not return home yet. We would communicate only about Lauren and practical things unless I agreed otherwise. He asked about counseling. I said I would go to individual counseling first. Not marriage counseling. Not yet. I needed one space where nobody asked me to save the family. Heather asked to speak to me too. I ignored the first message. Then the second. On the third, she wrote, "I know you hate me. I deserve it. But please let me say one thing without Mom or Jason in the middle." I almost deleted it. Instead, I agreed to a phone call. Not in person. Not yet. When I answered, neither of us spoke for a few seconds. Then Heather said, "I don't know how to live with what I did." I closed my eyes. That was the first thing she had said that did not sound like a defense. She cried quietly. I keep trying to explain it because if I can explain it, maybe I can survive being the person who did it. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched Lauren sleep. Heather said, "I thought if we gave you a baby, everything would be worth it." I told myself the lie would disappear inside the love. But it didn't. It got bigger every day. I wanted to scream at her. I also wanted my sister back. Both feelings lived inside me, fighting for space. I asked, "Was there ever anything between you and Jason before that?" "No," she said immediately. "Never. After?" "No. God, no." I believed her. I do not know if that made it better. Maybe it made it worse in a strange way. If it had been an affair, at least the betrayal would have a familiar shape. Desire. Secrecy. Selfishness. This was uglier because it came dressed as sacrifice. I asked, "Why didn't you tell me after?" Heather's voice broke. "Because you were happy." I almost hung up. She rushed on. "I know that's not an excuse. I know. But you were holding Lauren and smiling for the first time in years, and I thought if I told you, I would be taking your life away again." I said, "So you let me live inside a lie because my happiness was easier for you to watch than my pain." She went silent. Then she whispered, "Yes." That honesty hurt more than another excuse would have. I did not forgive her. But I did not hang up either. When the call ended, I sat in the dark for a long time. Lauren woke up hungry, and I fed her by the window while the lake outside reflected a thin piece of moon. I looked down at her face. Her tiny nose. Her dark lashes. Her little fist pressed against my shirt. For the first time since Jason confessed, I tried to let myself see only her. Not the secret behind how she was conceived. Not the lie that followed. Not Jason's guilt or Heather's shame or my mother's pressure or my father's rage. Just Lauren. My daughter. The next week, I met with an attorney. I did not file for divorce that day. I know some people will think that makes me weak. Maybe others will think even meeting a lawyer made me cruel. That is the impossible place I am living in now. Every choice looks wrong from one angle. The attorney explained options. Separation. Custody. Mediation. Legal protections. What would happen if I stayed? What would happen if I left? I listened. I took notes. I did not cry until I got back to the car. My father was driving. He did not ask what I had decided. He just handed me a tissue and said, "You don't have to know today." That became my rule. I do not have to know today. For now, I am not back in the house. Jason is staying elsewhere, so I can eventually go home with Lauren and decide what I want without feeling chased. That was his idea, and I accepted it. My mother is angry with me for keeping distance from Heather. I told her distance is not punishment. It is oxygen. She did not like that. But she stopped calling every hour. Heather started therapy. Jason did too. I am also in therapy. My therapist asked me what I wanted. I said, I want my old life back. She said, that life had a lie in it. I hated her a little for saying it. Then I went home and realized she was right. The life I want back never existed the way I thought it did. That is the grief no one knows how to comfort. I am not only grieving a marriage. I am grieving the version of motherhood I thought I had been given. I am grieving the sister I trusted. I am grieving the husband who made me feel safe while hiding the truth that would make me feel unsafe. And somehow, in the middle of all that grief, I am still raising Lauren. She laughed for the first time 3 nights ago. A real laugh. Tiny, startled, almost offended by her own happiness. I cried afterward in the bathroom. Not because her laugh hurt. Because it was beautiful. Because I was there to hear it. Because no matter how she came into this world, she is here. And I love her more than my anger, more than my confusion, more than the story adults built around her. But loving Lauren does not mean I have to call what happened acceptable. That is where I stand now. Jason says he will spend the rest of his life proving he can be honest. Heather says she will accept whatever relationship I allow, even if that means none for a long time. My mother says one day I will understand desperation. My father says desperation is not permission. And me? I wake up every morning and choose my daughter. The rest will come later, or it will not. A few days ago, Jason asked me if I thought there was any chance for us. I looked at him for a long time. I wanted to say yes because yes would be easier in some ways. I wanted to say no because no would feel cleaner. Instead, I told him the only honest thing I had. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. And I don't know if love matters without trust. He nodded like the answer hurt, but did not surprise him. Then he asked if he could kiss Lauren's forehead before leaving. I let him. Not for him. For her. After he walked out, I held my daughter close and stood in the nursery I had decorated before I knew the truth. For the first time, I did not leave the room. I looked at the crib, the soft curtains, the little shelves, the tiny clothes folded in the drawer. This room was built during a lie. But it does not have to belong to the lie forever. Maybe that is my calm victory. Not revenge. Not forgiveness. Not some dramatic ending where everyone gets exactly what they deserve. Just me, standing in the wreckage, deciding that my daughter and I are not wreckage too. I still do not know if my marriage is over. I do not know if my sister will ever be part of my life again. I do not know whether what they did was a twisted sacrifice, a betrayal, or both. Maybe that is what makes it so hard. Because if love can do something this damaging and still call itself love, how are any of us supposed to know when to forgive and when to walk away?